Every day we have to start with a blank page. We don't know what the headline is. We don't know what the score is going to be. We don't know what the drama on TikTok is going to look like. But every day we wake up and our entire company is based on reacting to what's happening in the world.
Okay, it's Thursday, February 23rd. We are still talking about the Penn acquisition, which is pretty interesting and pretty groundbreaking. Not a lot of big M&A happening in the media space right now, or really even in the sports betting space, if being honest. Hopefully that all comes back. But it's Thursday, February 23rd. It's episode 261 of the Token CEO podcast. I'm Erika. I'm the CEO of Barstool Sports. We want to thank Omega Accounting Solutions. Omega Accounting Solutions is a great partner of Barstool Sports. They know a lot about small businesses. I met about 400 accountants from Penn National last week. It was awesome. I love accountants, actually. I think they're like highly analytical and like anal and precise, and then some of them have great personality. I'm sure there's people like this inside of Omega Accounting Solutions too. But the good thing is they're all great accountants and they know a lot about a little something called the Employee Retention Credit. The Employee Retention Credit says that you, if you're a small business owner, can get up to $26,000 back for every employee that you employed during COVID. Pretty awesome. So if you kept the lights on, you kept your business running, you paid people during the pandemic, you can get money back from the government. Nothing is sweeter than that. Omega is a small business champion. They offer a whole bunch of resources for small businesses, but in particular, the Employee Retention Credit expires beginning March 31st. That's when the window closes. So the time to act on that is now. Call 1-800-300-9ERC. That's 1-800-300-9ERC, 1-800-300-9ERC, or visit omegataxcredits.com/barstoolsports now. All right, so now you're going to see what it's like to go mingle with a bunch of Penn people. And we're going to show a quick highlight of our time in Atlantic City last week. We brought a bunch of people to Atlantic City. It's the Penn company meeting. They do this once a year. They bring all the people from all the casinos, all different places to one place at one time. But what's really cool is that these are all people who share the same vision. They're part of the same team. They want to win. They love working for Penn. They're curious about Barstool Sports. And they take the opportunity every year to get everyone together. Imagine if we did that. I think we kind of did that at the Super Bowl, but not really. Anyways, so now we'll do a quick look at that.
We're so excited to be here. We're new to the corporate game, so all the Barstool people are in front because we got here late. And we didn't realize that that's where the front row seats go. But what I'm going to do is I'll take you through a little bit of what drives us, what makes us Barstool, how are we unique, what does our business look like, what is it we do every day. So our history, who we are, what our values look like, landscape and trends, and where we're going ahead. So 2023 is the 20th anniversary of Barstool Sports. So Paul Gulzinski, we call him Gaz, and Dave Portnoy started Barstool Sports in, I think, Dave's kitchen. And Dave had a corporate job, much like many people here, and decided he didn't like it and that he wanted to make content. And he knew the only way he could do that would be to sell ads to gambling companies. So he created a newspaper. He wrote under a whole bunch of pseudonyms. He got a bunch of weirdos in Boston to write about sports betting, their lives, Boston media. And Barstool really became this kind of cult phenomenon in the city of Boston and increasingly in the state of Massachusetts. And kind of haphazardly, Dave grew it by hiring people in New York and hiring people in Philadelphia, one person here, one person there. He paid people by personal checks. They knew that they had to blog or write every 30 minutes, and that was about it. When I interviewed for the job at Barstool, I remember meeting the editor-in-chief, and I was like, hey, when was the last time you talked to Dave? And he's like, oh, Dave texted me last year at the holidays to tell me my bonus. And this was like in April. So it was just kind of a funny company, but the spirit of Barstool was always about making people laugh and creating compelling content and being very contrarian calling things like they are, being very authentic, and bringing people along for the journey. And it evolved from the newspaper. What year did you go into the blog? 2009? In 2009, the CTO of Business Insider at the time was a stoolie, lived in Boston, moved to New York City, and was like, hey, Dave, I'll make you a website if you could just take the newspaper and turn it into a blog, and I'd love to read it. So Dave's like, sure. I showed up in 2016, it was the same website, basically. But that's kind of how Barstool became a blog. And then from 2016 on, this company has really grown leaps and bounds. We've gone from 12 people to now we're over 400 people. We've gone from like $5 million in revenue to over $250 million in revenue. And we've really exploded in thousands and thousands of different places. At this point, we're the most influential millennial and Gen Z brand. Wendy, I can't believe how old millennials are. That's so sad. I thought they were like 18. Now I'm like, oh, you're in your 40s. Which makes me so old. But anyways, what makes Barstool so special is that we are a content and a lifestyle and an entertainment and a sports and a media company that really has no rules. But what that means is that we've created a content business and we've created a lifestyle brand by being on the same level as our fans. We're relatable. We talk about what happens inside of Barstool as much as we talk about what happens outside of Barstool. When people are fighting, we turn the cameras on. When people have challenging storylines, we cover them obsessively. So we make content 24/7. We let people make whatever content they feel like, which is very, very counter to how you see most media companies operate. If you work at ESPN and you're a talent or you're a personality, you have a producer, you have a supervising producer, they have a boss, they have a boss's boss, and those people tell you what to say, what to wear, where to sit, how long you're going to be on air. Everything is very, very controlled. What's made Barstool so exceptional is how uncontrolled we are. When we bring personalities into Barstool, we say, here's a computer, here's a cell phone, here's access to a blog, to TikTok, to our social handles, to any number of studios. Go make whatever it is you want. And as a result, it's enabled us to be very, very opportunistic around what we create. And what we've taught people how to do is to share the journey of what they're doing along with the actual thing itself. And the only thing Dave and I ever really asked of people is to be on 24/7. If you're a Eagles fan like Jay, and if Jay were a Barstool personality, he'd be ranting about Roger Goodell on Sunday night. That's all we ask of people. And what it's resulted in is that when something happens in sports, in news, in culture, in entertainment, in the media, in a city, in the headlines, people turn to Barstool Sports to hear what our people are going to say. And that's what keeps so many eyes on us, and that's what's enabled us to grow so successfully. We have a massive audience. So I think the number as of this week is 217 million. So we have 217 million social followers. We have 37 million monthly downloads and vodcast views. So every month we have 80 some odd podcasts and shows. We put those across 1,400, I think the number's actually higher, 1,700 social accounts. We splice those up into hundreds and thousands of pieces of content. And as a result, we are doing billions and billions and billions of views. There is no better company to market to young people and really anyone who consumes entertainment, lifestyle, and culture in this country than Barstool Sports. This is a marketing engine. That is the single best thing we do. And the greatest thing, and we had said this to Jay and Chris when we first met them and when we did the first investment deal, is you're buying a 20-year story. And it's hard to replicate a 20-year story. And actually what I love, and it's been so educational for us to be here, is so many people have been at Penn for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. The score guys have been there forever. You all have 5, 10, 15-year stories. That's what makes the company so similar in a lot of ways. Our story is just very public. And what's so dramatic about that is that when you look at the era that we live in, we're in an attention economy. You're scrolling through Instagram or TikTok or Twitter, or you're changing all the channels if you still watch television. we're in an attention economy, and you cannot get a 20-year story at this point because there's so much competition for your attention. So we have an advantage that FanDuel isn't going to be able to compete with, and ESPN isn't going to be able to compete with, and NBC isn't going to be able to compete with, and the social platforms aren't going to be able to compete with, because we've been building it for 20 years and we're obsessive about growing it for 20 years to come. I talked about this a little bit. Our content is everywhere. So when we think about a piece of content that we create, and at our core, this is a content company, we think about, how does this play on Snapchat? How does this play on TikTok? How does this play on Twitter? How does this play on YouTube? If you were to ask us, I don't know, Gaz, like 2 years ago, or maybe 3 years ago, there were like 3 formats on Instagram. You'd post a photo and you're like, check, I delivered the asset to Instagram. Now there's short videos. Now there's photo albums. So every social platform, to get more of your attention and more of consumers' attention, is creating more and more orifices for content. And what our company is very, very good at is finding and understanding and delivering to all of those places simultaneously. We do that across 110 personalities, 95 shows, and 17 different content verticals. We talk about the military. We talk about being gay in New York City. We talk about being a single female. We talk about hockey. We talk about football. We talk about basketball. We talk about college sports. We talk about city life. There's really not many things that we don't talk about at Barstool, and what our goal is to have those conversations, those opinions, and those perspectives meet as many people in as many places as many times as possible. And that's really what we're good at. And what I think the opportunity is how do we take the 20-year story, all these things that we've done, and how do we incorporate Penn into that? How do we use that as a funnel to drive people to a casino? How do we use that as a funnel to get someone to make a bet? How do we use that as a funnel to get someone to join the loyalty program? And that's really the vision of us being in the mix with you here. We know what moves people. Pardon My Take's the #1 sports podcast. We have #1s in most show categories that we're in. $1 million worth of game, #1 music podcast. Spit and Chicklets is the #1 hockey brand in America, only behind one brand, and that's the NHL. So we did that with no investment, no money, no sports rights, which makes us very, very different. Everything we've had to create is based on humor and opinion, relatability, and authenticity. And that's how we've built all these brands. What we've also done is to productize it. So when I got to Barstool Sports, we had like a little ad business. We had probably 2 advertisers, 2 to 3, maybe 5 advertisers. And we had what I called Dave's T-shirt shop, which is these guys made T-shirts. And what I was worried about was that we weren't going to be ever able to ride one horse, because Barstool was controversial. We stepped in it all the time. These guys could pop off and say something that nobody liked really at any given hour of the day or night, which still kind of happens. But we knew we had to build a very diverse business. A business that had multiple lines of revenue and a business that was distributed on multiple platforms. We still have that business today. You're going to see that continue. We open sports bars. We're creating an apparel line. We're really interested in not only being a great ad business, being a great converter of audience to the sports book, but also in productizing the IP that we're creating. Because what Barstool can do, unlike anyone else, is to grow IP and then figure out how to monetize and convert that IP nearly simultaneously. We're the #1 publisher on TikTok. It is becoming increasingly difficult. You may read this in the ad trades or in the news. It's becoming very difficult for brands to grow on social media. The rise of the influencers has kind of pushed media brands to the side. And you see it. Most media brands that we competed with 7 years ago, or that I've competed with in my career, they don't exist anymore. They're not relevant, they're not growing, they're not driving a good economic model or a financial model. What brands are being replaced with is personalities and influencers. What Barstool has is a collection of influencers wrapped up in a reality show and a 20-year history that makes it so that we can grow where others cannot. So that's why we're the #1 publisher on TikTok. If you look at our audience right now, I think 80% of it is from 2 places, TikTok and Instagram. If you were to ask us 2 years ago or 4 years ago, hey, what do you think about TikTok? We would have been like, we don't know. It might work, it might not. Now it's the single biggest driver of views for us. So that's how nimble and fast we have to be as a company. And I think that's why we are such an asset to this group of people here, because we understand where audiences live and we know how to attract them to us. Our audience is very loyal. They buy what we say to buy. They watch what we ask them to watch. They bet when we ask them to bet. We're protective of this audience. We've had them for 20 years. We've spent a lot of time, effort, and heartache trying to connect with them. But we really have a very good pulse for affinity and loyalty. And that's why we're very proud and sometimes very prickly about our brand, because we know it means something to people. When you see someone else wearing a Barstool Sports sweatshirt or a hat or a t-shirt or a Chiclets t-shirt or a Mean Girl t-shirt, doesn't matter, you recognize a fan in another person. Barstool Sports means something to people. That's also what makes us very different. If you were to ask, the #1 thing Dave and I care about is keeping this brand hot for another 10 years, making sure the Stool and Stars means something. And that's gonna take now everyone, this brand is yours. So having everyone think about what the Stool and Stars means, how do we keep evolving it, how do we grow it, how do we make it funny? How do we make it compelling? But ultimately, it has to mean something to people, and that's really what we care about. The last thing on this that I would say is I've been thinking a lot about this. The acquisition is at the end of this week, and I was like, gosh, how are we similar to Penn? How are we different? And I think the biggest thing that's different about our day is, and this has been true since Barstool started, is every day we have to start with a blank page. We don't know what the headline is. We don't know what the score is going to be. We don't know what the drama on TikTok is going to look like. But every day we wake up and our entire company is based on reacting to what's happening in the world. And I think it's helpful in understanding, I think as we move into your world, we probably seem a little bit chaotic and distracted and maybe hard to deal with, but I thought this was an important way to show how we think about things. Barstool's kind of been a company that's been 1 inch in front of its face. And we've always just moved very, very fast, but we've moved in a matter of inches. And part of the reason is that in order to stay hot, you have to win the day. And we start every day with nothing. And so it helps, I think, people understand, why are you guys so bombastic? How come you're so opinionated? Do you have to be obsessed about this, that, and the other thing that happened last night? And the answer is yes, we do, because we've had to build this place off our own propulsion. And our own propulsion is what makes this blank page turn into 200 million followers, right? Because we're trying to find ways to talk to people and connect with people and resonate with people in the moment, at the moment, all the time. So I think that hopefully is helpful just in what drives us, what makes us tick.
All right, let's take a quick break and talk about Rocket Money. Rocket Money used to be known as Truebill. It's new and improved. Now they go by Rocket Money. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions. They monitor your spending and they help you lower your bills all in one place. What is better than that? 80% of people, so 80% of the people listening to this have subscriptions subscriptions that they forgot about. So maybe you subscribe to Hulu, maybe you subscribe to Netflix, maybe you subscribe to Peacock, maybe you subscribe to like 17 other channels and subscriptions, and you're like, I am throwing all my money out the window, $19.99 at a time, and I want to save money because I want to buy a house, I want to invest in my future, I want that new pair of shoes, whatever that may be. What's awesome about Rocket Money is they'll quickly and easily identify your subscriptions for you. Nothing is worse than trying to cancel something when that company does not want you to cancel. It's actually an art form. It's so annoying. So what's amazing about Rocket Money is they do all the hard work. They do all the digging. They're like, boop, boop, boop. Here's all of Erika's subscriptions. Don't want that one. Don't want that one. Don't want that one. You can save on average, $720 a year. That's a lot of money. Over 3 million people have used Rocket Money. On average, they've saved that $720 a year. Stop throwing your money away. Cancel unwanted subscriptions and manage your expenses the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/token. That's rocketmoney.com/token. rocketmoney.com/token. All right, so we'll kick it to Steve. We've got Steve Krakauer. Steve is one of my good friends. I actually met him. He's like an internet friend. You know when you have like an internet friend, which is someone you follow and then you like tweet at each other. We've talked a bunch over Zoom. He was in New York City, so he came in. So this is his book, Uncovered. Uncovered is how the media got cozy with power, abandoned its principles, and lost the people. Great subtitle. You can also subscribe to Steve's The Fourth Watch, which is his newsletter, or you can watch the Megyn Kelly Show, which he produces. All right, Steve.
Okay.
All right, tell people why you're here and who you are for people who don't remember.
Okay, yes, Steve, I've been on,
Great
I think I've been 2 or 3, thank you. I know, I bought this on Black Friday, and so I figured,
Oh, you did? You got it on sale? Smart.
On sale on Black Friday.
Savvy buyer.
I'm, it's I had to wear it because, it's my first time in the Barstool office, but also.
Did you get to walk around?
No, not really, but I took some snaps, I saw the little newspaper stand.
Yeah.
No, I love it. I've seen it on YouTube many times. So, the book Uncovered, I wrote last year, comes out now, February 21st. And it really is my look at the media. I've been in and around media for a dozen years or so. I'm the executive producer of the Megyn Kelly Show, and so that keeps me very much kind of in the media world. But I also previously worked at CNN and NBC and Fox, and for about 3 years I've been writing the Fourth Watch newsletter and podcast, and that also kind of keeps me around the media world.
And what I think is so interesting about you is you have such an interesting take on media. So like for people who are interested in media, explain, like I think you simultaneously love the media, but also debunk them and challenge them all simultaneously. Without a lot of ego, actually. I feel like your peer set has a lot of ego. You don't come at it with a lot of ego.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I think a couple factors here. I definitely, I worked at CNN until 2013, and it really, was 10 years ago, but it feels like a completely different era of CNN. I will say they have a new management there now. I think things are on the upswing maybe at CNN.
You do?
I think that the thought process is. I don't think we've seen it necessarily in action, but I do think that the thought is there.
What's the vision?
I think the vision is getting back to news is the main one, and doing something that's more, entertaining maybe is the wrong word, because I don't think they're going to start like literally doing entertainment, but making the product, it's stale, it's boring, and when it's not, it's this, bomb throwing MSNBC competitor, and that's not sustainable either. So I do think that they're starting to clean that up. But yeah, to your point, I loved my time at CNN, and I love the media, and it like pains me to watch what it became, because I actually do think that I'm a big fan of independent media and the upstarts and Substack and podcasts, but I also think we need a strong, institutional media that can be a check on power, can have big resources and legal departments and things to do the big fights. And right now we've just the general person in America has lost such trust in the media, and it bothers me so much. And so yes, that's definitely the perspective I come from. It's not political either, because I'm not an overly political person. But I often find that the criticism comes from a media that has become just so obsessed with politics and allowed themselves to make the mistakes that they didn't make before.
So the whole premise of the book is really just that media lost its following. Like media lost the people because they cozied up to politics. So why do you think traditional media did this? Like, what is it they were chasing in politics? Is it?
Yeah, I really see it. I lay out kind of 5 big problems in the book, and I do think it's complicated. That's part of the issue. It's not as easy to say, well, the media is full of left-wing crazies, because to be honest, when I worked at CNN, I would say most people were liberal when I was there too, but something fundamentally changed since then. And I laid a few of the problems. Geographic bias is one. You could walk around New York City and literally visit the newsrooms of all the most important media giants, and hit them all, and that's an issue. it's always sort of been this way, but it's gotten worse in
So
that
it's
way.
homogenous and it's East Coast liberal elite kind of thing, or
it's just a group think. I mean, and it's not even necessarily people who are all liberal, but they think a certain way and they don't get out of the bubble. I think COVID was bad for it also. It even more just put themselves on their little Zoom screens rather than getting out there. So that's one. But there's a few, coziness with power and lack of introspection. But I honestly think one of the biggest ones is just the business has changed, and I talk about this the decline in a clear, focused on what's the business incentives here. And when a business that for a very long time, you talk about media, you talk about like ESPN. I have a lot on ESPN in the book in chapter 9. These are things that didn't really have to feel like their business was shifting beneath their feet before, and now it really does. And I think when you have that, you start making bad decisions based on what the Twitter Bob is saying, for example, and that's not sustainable. And they don't have to do that either. I mean, look, social media is a huge factor here also. The way that social media, the incentives of social media, the way that it can feel
just the incendiary nature of social media.
And I mean, you get 20 positive comments or 20 negative comments, and you're going to feel a certain way. It's inevitable, and that leads to bad decisions too. So I think a lot of it is just these different structures that have happened here. Some of it's just purely the audience is just changing now, and they're flailing and panicking, and it leads to bad decisions that are harming the general trust that people have for them.
For sure. I think there's a couple issues, and we've talked about this over the years, which is one is, all right, so the distribution format is becoming irrelevant. Like it's, TV had it so good, whether you were Fox or CNN, like they had it so good.
Yeah.
You got a guaranteed revenue based on the number of cable subs, plus you had a really lucrative ad business, plus you were the only game in town.
Right.
Like you wanted to reach millions and millions of people. TV was it. Like print was okay. It was glossy, but it expired. You couldn't refresh it. The internet was like dirty and misunderstood. Yeah. And now it's like it's all been upended. So the business model of needing page views, I think, has really changed. I mean, we built our business chasing page views, but it's almost more expected in the internet because the internet is all opinion driven and it covers every corner on every topic on this planet.
Right.
But when television tried to do that, it made the ship so heavy and also so lopsided.
Yes.
Because they catered not only to, there was groupthink inside the newsroom, but then it just marketed to the same ideology all the time in a more frankly incendiary way almost. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. And I also think one of the things you're talking about with these institutions, I have, like I said, a long section on ESPN. I talked to Bob Lee, legendary sports anchor, and he tells all the interviews I do in the book are on the record, and so Bob puts his name to it and talks about stories he's never talked about before. But he describes a meeting. He was in the meeting when the Barstool show came up, and he talks about it in the book. And how it was a meeting with like 40 people in it, on air people, executives, and someone spoke up and had a negative comment, and the executives kind of look around the room like shit, like we're gonna have to do something about this. And it's when you have, there's pros and cons to having that much buy-in, but certainly one of the downsides is when you have everyone have a seat at the table.
When you're seeking consensus, you're like, shit, the only answer is no.
Right.
Is we can't do it. Like you end up doing nothing.
Yeah, and the reason that you have all those people in the room is because the business has changed, because you're kind of starting to feel like this quicksand beneath your feet, and then the social media, loudest voices, the amplification,
executives are vain,
right? And so that leads to these kinds of decisions. He also talks about there was the crazy, Rachel Nichols, Maria Taylor story during the NBA Finals, which the New York Times kind of published the story about, and it was sort of shadily sourced. And
just for people who, it's Rachel, somebody got somebody else's job, right? Maria got picked instead of Rachel.
Maria got Rachel Nichols' job on the NBA Finals. Okay. Rachel was complaining about that to a source. It was secretly tape recorded and then released about a year later by the New York Times. Rachel was then having suspended, essentially. Yeah. Maria Taylor got the job, but then left for NBC. And Bob describes it as this drive-by assassination of Rachel Nichols. And
by the New York Times?
By the New York Times, but also, I mean, he doesn't say by ESPN, but, they didn't have Rachel's back on it. It was, once it got public, there was no.
Yeah, they just dropped her like a bad habit.
Yeah, because you get the backlash from social media. You get the loudest voices that don't necessarily have real power to hurt your brand, but these executives are not
mentioning you.
And they're panicking. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges right now is because of the business model is not secure. That's when these decisions
they're flailing, and then there's too many people involved in the decision making, and the people at the top don't really have vision. I also think they're obsessed with that one format, which is television. Like, I remember going to meet with like one of the highest people at CNN, and he didn't take his eyes off the television. Like, the television was there, and I'm sitting over here, and he just like talked to me like this, and I was like, this is insane. Like, that format isn't even relevant anymore. So, okay, so where can people find the book?
Yeah, the book is available wherever you get books, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can go to readuncover.com, find all the places to find it. It's got an audiobook also, which has, you can hear from the 24 people in the media industry who speak in their voices.
They do it in their own voice. That's cool. That's a neat technique.
So,
that's cool.
So you can find it there, readuncover.com.
And then how do people follow you?
You can follow me on Twitter, Steve Krakauer on Instagram, and also Fourth Watch is where I write on a weekly basis.
I love the Fourth Watch.
Thank you.
The Fourth
Appreciate
Watch
it.
is so interesting.
It's on Substack now.
Is it?
Yes.
Do you charge for it?
It's mostly free. I write the weekly newsletter. I write on kind of a variety of topics. It's free, and then I do some extra stuff for paying subscribers.
So great. That's it for today's episode. Thank you for listening, and we will see you back here next week.